Hello, my name's Rob and I'm going to show you how to tumble rocks. I'm going to assume that you're new to this, maybe thinking about getting a tumbler, maybe you've just gotten a tumbler, maybe you've only done a couple batches, you're having trouble with your tumbler. So I'm going to assume you don't know too much and cover all the little details, so this will be probably a fairly long video. I'll be using a rotary tumbler for this. I have a Rotary 33B, which I think is a good first tumbler. This has two 3-pound barrels. So both these barrels roll here at the same time. I like having two barrels. You don't pay that much more because you're paying for one motor and two barrels. You can get this in a, cut off there. It's called a 3A, I think. But for another, I don't know, 30 bucks or 40 bucks, you can get a whole lot of barrels, so you may as well do that. The reason I like two barrels is because you can have something going in each barrel. You can have two rough tumbles going, you can have different rocks going in each barrel, you can have one barrel doing coarse and then the other barrel doing the later stages of tumbling. Just gives you a lot more versatility, so I always suggest beginners get a 2-barrel tumbler. This is my first tumbler and it still works great. I've had it for 6 or 7 years. I don't work for Rotary, by the way, I'm not getting paid to say that, I just really like the tumblers. So anyhow, I'm going to be tumbling, this is called Serape Jasper, it's from Mexico, and I've never tumbled this before, but this is a hard rock on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. It's about a 7, and I suggest the beginners start with either agate or jasper or some other hard rock that's around that hardness. Softer rocks are harder to tumble, and you're better off starting with something hard. They just shine up a lot easier than softer rocks do. So anyhow, this is pretty stuff. Like I said, I've never tumbled it before, but it looked nice, so I ordered some. I got 10 pounds of it. I noticed this piece, it's really pretty here, and I'll probably end up throwing it in the tumbler, but it's got all these crystals on the back here. So for now, I'm going to set that one aside, and I might just keep that as a specimen. So anyhow, I got, there was a couple different sizes I could buy. I think I got like medium and large, so there's some smaller pieces in here. You want a mixture of sizes when you do this. You don't want them all big or all small. It's better to have a mixture of sizes, and then they just kind of nestle in together a little better. You get more surface contact. The more parts of the rock you have touching when they're rubbing around in the tumbler, the better. That's going to make them grind down a little bit faster. So I got little tiny pieces and then bigger pieces. So let's fill up the barrel. So these larger pieces are kind of big for this barrel. You want to have enough motion in there, but you can get away with throwing maybe 2 of these in. 1, no problem. 2's maybe pushing a little bit, but what the heck. So just going to throw a couple small pieces on the bottom here. Another medium-sized one. And then throw that big one in the middle. So you want this barrel about 2/3 or 3/4 full. It's not real fussy how you do it, but I found this a nice little tool when I first started. I measured the barrel. There's a little lip where this sits down inside here. I measured from the top of that lip to the bottom, and I think I did 2/3. I figured out whatever that distance was and found 2/3 of it, actually 1/3 of it, and then I added on that little 1/4 inch or so on the top there, 1/2 inch. So this is 1/3 of the height of the inside of the barrel when it's closed, plus that little lip. So when I set this down on top, if it sits level on there, I know I'm pretty close to 2/3 full. And I can get a couple more pieces in there. Okay, so that's level across there, maybe one more. And that should give them good movement in there. You don't want it too full, you don't want it too empty. Right around there is good. So next we need some water in here. I usually go with 1/2 cup with a 3-pound barrel. I probably am a little on the light side from what most people do. Most people would say just fill to the bottom of the top layer of rocks, and I'm a little bit under that, but that's just kind of how I do it. And then this is silicon carbide grit. This is 80 grit. and common sizes you might want are 60-90 or 80 or 46-70. That's 46/70. That's a little coarser grit. So if I'm doing a bigger barrel, like a 6 or a 12-pound barrel, should be about that big around. Let me show you one. This is a 12-pound barrel. So in something like this, I use 46-70 grit because there's going to be more weight of rocks in there. So as they're turning, there's more, the rocks are way up here, pushing down a little bit harder, and it'll break down that more coarse grit. But with a small barrel like this, most people use 80 grit or 60-90 grit. So in a little barrel like this, 3 tablespoons is about enough. You could put in 4 if you wanted, but I'm going to go with 3. And then I always button up the top right away here so this stuff doesn't get spilled. You don't want that getting in with your other grits or tracking around the house. So then we put the lid on. And you put it on your tumbler. This doesn't have an on-off switch, so when you plug it in, it goes on. It goes that way, and this goes this way. This barrel's empty right now, but that's the noise it makes. These smaller barrels aren't very loud. You wouldn't want it in the same room with you. But if it's down the basement like mine is, you're not going to hear this too much upstairs. The bigger barrels, you can hear those thumping around a little bit more. So I'm actually not going to run it on this machine. I have a big homemade tumbler I'll put this in. I can put a whole bunch of these barrels in there. So I'll be running it in that, but this is what you would be running it on. It really doesn't matter. It's just turning the barrel. It doesn't matter what machine you use to do it. So we'll check back in on this in a week. So it's been a week and the rocks are rinsed off, and you can see there's quite a bit of change in this first week. I really like the first week of tumbling because the rocks change kind of the most out of all the weeks, I'd say. You go from sharp, jagged rocks to rocks that are a little less sharp and jagged. So you see, like on this one that hasn't been tumbled, it's real sharp along there. I think you can see that. Real pointy, and not going to cut my finger or anything, but compared to this, this is much more rounded off on the edges. These have all gotten much more mellowed on the edges. This is a pretty rock, I really like that. I'm concerned about this notch in here though. When other rocks are kind of rubbing against that, they tend not to get into that notch there. So I either have to wear this whole area out down to that depth, or what I'll probably do in a couple weeks is cut off part of this, and I'll probably use a saw to do it. If you don't have a saw, you could use a chisel. I just really want to keep that shape there, so I'll probably try to cut it right along here somewhere, take this piece off. So that's a decision I'll make in a couple weeks when I see how it's going. So these are looking good. Oops. They're coming along nicely. See, I've got a couple little tiny pieces in here that broke off somewhere along the line. So all of this will go back in the tumbler. And I don't expect these to be done for several weeks yet. So just the rocks in here. The first rock will probably come out in, I don't know, 3 weeks from now. So my volume's down a little bit because those all shrunk a little. So where this was sitting up level, now it's down between maybe 3/8 of an inch down. So I'm going to throw another rock in there, get the level kind of up where it was. So not level, but you get the idea. Alright, so just like last week, we add in our water and 3 tablespoons of 80 grit, and I'll keep doing the same procedure week after week after week until I get enough rocks ready to fill up a barrel this size again to go to the next stage. So any that get done I'll just set aside, but like I said, I'm probably not going to set anything aside for a little while now. So this will go back on the tumbler, and I'll see you next week. Alright, that's 2 weeks down on the Jasper, and I've already rinsed these off and inspected all of them. And these 4 little guys are getting really close to being done. They've got another week or maybe 2 before they're ready for the next stage. So they go back in. Most of these are not anywhere near being done yet, so we've got a long ways to go on most of them. This one that's been bugging me since the beginning because of this big notch in it and this really cool pattern back here. I really want to take this end off it, and I looked at it closely. I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but there's a crack that runs right along here and right along there. It's pretty much exactly where I want this to be broken off. So I'm going to take this chisel, not on top of here, I'll put it on the floor in a minute. I'm going to put the chisel there and smack it with a hammer, and I'm hoping to take that off but preserve all this. This one's a mess. It's got a big crack here, it's got a crack over here, and it really needs to be broken. This crack in particular kind of goes around the edges, so I know it goes all the way through and I'm never going to get rid of it, so I'm going to take that off right there, hopefully right across here. This crack is also probably all the way through, but I'm going to let it go a little bit longer because I can't see it on the sides, I can't see it on the back. I do see it from here around to here. So that should probably be broken also, but I'm hoping not to make the rocks quite that small. So that's going to go for another week or 2, and I'll wait to make a decision on it. The other one that doesn't look real bad, but it's got this little protrusion here, I'm going to try to take that off with a chisel also. Now I can do all this with a saw and be a little more precise about it, but this is supposed to be a video for beginners, and most of you won't have saws if you're just getting into tumbling probably. So I'm going to try to stick with hand tools the best I can. So you can just pick up a chisel at the hardware store, get a hammer and give it a smack. So I'm going to do that, probably throw in a couple more rocks because the level is down a little bit. So even though I'm not taking anything out, all the rocks got a little smaller this week, and so I'll put in a rock or 2 or 3 or whatever it takes to get that level up to about 2/3 or 3/4 again. I just broke this rock and I forgot to turn the camera on, but let's see if I can recreate this. This looked like this, and I put the hammer or the chisel right there and gave it a whack, and it came off like that. This is pretty sharp along here. That's really thin and sharp. So I'm thinking by the time this tumbles enough to take all this other stuff down, that might round off well enough and be fine. So I'm not going to do any more to it right now. I really don't want to break this part of it. So both these pieces will go in, and I'm going to try to do something with this one next. So there's this huge crack here, and then there's a crack here, and this crack looks like it goes most of the way around. So I'm going to take this one off first, and then I might let it run a little longer. I might just knock this other one off right now too. So I have this little shield here I put down to contain the shrapnel. Didn't think it broke at first, but it broke exactly where I thought it was going to. And I don't know if that crack goes all the way through. It probably does, but I'm going to tumble this for a little bit longer and just see what happens. I'll keep an eye on it. And then this one, I just want to take off that little pointy part right there. I don't know if the chisel's going to grip it though. That might not be so easy. When I put the chisel on it, it slides away. It just slides down it. I don't think I can get a grip on that one. Let's try it without that. Oh, there we go. A little bigger than I wanted, but that's okay. That's better than it was. So that'll round off. That'll be fine. All right. So those go in the tumbler, and like I said, I'll put a couple extra rocks in and I'll check back with you again next week. I just got done rinsing the rocks off after their third week in the tumbler, and I'm pretty happy with the way they're shaping up. This one that I cut along here, or broke along here, it was all jagged and rough. It's not anymore. It still has some pretty big protrusions that need to come off. But like this rock's come along pretty well. Still some pretty good dents. We're still a couple weeks out from any of these being done, but they're getting closer. So I'm going to throw them back in here, and we'll check and see if they've lost any volume. And I'm sure they've lost some volume, but if there's anything significant. And yeah, that's down about the width of the lip there. So what I'm going to do is put in some little saw scraps. And this isn't to fill up the extra space. This is actually to get in between the little nooks and crannies in there a little better. So all these rocks are much bigger than these that I'm going to put in. So these should fill in little holes and just have more surfaces grinding together, which should make the rocks finish up a little bit better, a little bit quicker. So those should go down the holes, and get the box of rocks here. You probably fit kind of a medium-sized one in there. And that one blue. So one more in there, that kind of brings it up. So put them away for another week, and see you next week. Well, this is a big week. Got 2 rocks that are ready for the next stage. Unfortunately, none of these rocks are ready for the next stage. So I want to pull the camera a little closer and show you what I look for each week, and I'll just go through several rocks with you and show you really close what I'm looking for. Alright, so this is the first rock. It's not perfect, it's also not a very pretty rock, but I tumble them all. So there's some really little holes in there, but they look to me like holes that aren't going to go away. I can see some little sparkles in there, so I think there's little crystals in there, and those kind of holes usually go throughout the rock, and if you grind those away, there's just more that show up underneath. So I'll move that on. I'll just have to be careful to make sure all the grit's out of the holes between stages. This is a better rock. It looks perfect to me. I don't see any problems with it, so that should come out really nice in the end. And we have these 3 that aren't ready to go on. This one, there's a little bit of a dip right there. I can feel with my finger, I can't really, well, I can see a little bit, but that's not ready. And the rest of the rock looks fine. I probably should move that on, but I'm not going to. This one is also close. Oh, right here. Hope you can see this. That little shallow fracture there, with one more week of tumbling, I hope I can get it out. There's also a little piece, a little spot right there. Those don't look bad here, but in the final stage, after the final polish, they're going to look bad. They'll show up really clearly, so I'd rather tumble those out. This one's close. It's got a bad spot right there. And there's another little spall right there, so that little guy's got to come out, and that should come out easily in a week. It looks really, really shallow. Alright, let's look at some of the rocks that aren't doing so well. This one still has that protrusion. I'm wondering if I should have knocked that off. I'm kind of thinking I should have, but it's really deep back here. That's going to take a while to get that to tumble out, so this is going to be in there for a while, and hopefully that mellows out a little bit at least. This one's getting pretty close. Worst spot is right there. There's a pretty deep groove right there, and there's some spots up here that need to go, but that's not looking too bad. Spot right there that's almost gone. That'll probably be a couple more weeks before it's ready to go on. And then this one that I showed you a week or 2 ago, I need to split that. That crack is really deep and it goes all the way across there. So I'm going to take a hammer and chisel and break that right in half there. The back doesn't look too bad, but I think that goes really deep. So that one's going to get broken in half right in a crack there. And the rest of these are, you know, looking better than they started out. They're getting close. That's got a bad spot right there. A little bad spot there, a little bad spot there. But it's getting close. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we take out quite a few of these rocks and start moving some new ones into their place. All right, see you next week. This week these two little guys are done. I think I predicted they'd be done last week, and they are. So those are ready for the next stage. This one that I hadn't broken before, I decided to break it, so probably should have done that in the first place, but it's broken now. And with my rocks that are in there and a few little scraps from before, there's a little bit of room to put a couple extras in here, so I'm gonna get 3 in there. Yeah, throw 4 in. So 4 more rocks in there, and we'll let them go for another week. Another week down, and 1 more rock ready to move on, so that'll get set aside. And these 3 are really, really close. They all have really little imperfections in them, but they've been there this long, I may as well throw them in for another week and make them look the way I want them to look. This one, on the other hand, it has a kind of deep hole right there, just on that end. The rest of the rock's looking pretty good. It's got a little ways to go, but I'm going to put a nail in there and just give it a tap with a hammer, and hopefully that end will just pop right off, and that'll grind down quicker that way than waiting to grind through all this rock and then smooth it out after that. These are not that close, so let's see what we can get in here. If I can add more this week or not. Nope, I was hoping I could throw in something else, but that's pretty much where it was before. I did take a rock out. I could probably throw one in, but I want to make sure there's enough action and movement in there that they actually grind down pretty well. Oh, by the way, the last couple of weeks, I've been putting in 4670 grit instead of 80 grit. I haven't noticed a big difference. I didn't think I would. Last week, I also put in 4 tablespoons instead of 3 tablespoons. I don't know how much it matters, but I think I'm going to continue putting in 4 tablespoons and try to get these done a little bit quicker. So we'll see you next week. Well, another week's down, and 2 more little rocks done. That's a really pretty little rock. This one doesn't look like much, but it's going in. So this is what we have finished after, I think, 7 weeks. These 2 are really close, and I'm pretty sure I told you one of these was going to be done this week. I think this one, it's been a week for me. I know it's only been like 30 seconds since I talked about it for you, but these still aren't quite done. The rest of these have a ways to go yet. And let's see if I can get some more in there. I think I can fit maybe a couple more in there. I'm trying to put small ones in now, because with a small barrel I've already got some big ones in there. I don't want to hinder the movement too much. I want things to be able to move around pretty well. So with these bigger ones in there, it doesn't let stuff roll around too well. So try to keep it to just a couple of those. So we'll see you next week. All right, another week down. I got one little guy done. This one looks pretty nice, so it goes in the done pile. That's where we're at right now. And then these 4, I was going to show you, they look like they're really getting close. So this one, I just about burst into tears a minute ago because I was looking at it and going, oh, it looks pretty good, except there's this crack. And then I thought, oh, that crack goes way out around the end. And I pulled on this end with my fingers, and this broke right off. So that was going to come off anyhow. I just didn't expect it. I hadn't noticed that before. So now I got to wait for that whole end to grind down again, which kind of makes me sad. But that goes back in. This one has, it looks really good, except there's one little spot right in there. You're not even going to be able to see it, but it's just about there. So it's been in for 9 weeks already. Well, I don't know if this particular one has, but the barrel's been going for 9 weeks. So what's 1 more week? May as well make it perfect. This one also has a little bad spot right in there. I can feel it. I'm sure you can't see it. There's a little crystally pocket right here. That's fine. I'll just let that go and make sure I clean it out really well. That'll actually look cool, but I want to get that one little speck out. So like I said, it's been in there long enough. May as well go one more week. And then this one looks pretty good, except it's got a little crack right around the top there. That crack goes all the way around. I can feel bumps on it, so I'm willing to leave that crack as long as I can get the little bumps out, but it might end up falling off like that other one did. So let's go back in. So where are we at here? Probably don't want to add too much more by the time I add in my little filler rocks. Maybe I can get one more in there, see how these do. Oops, one goes away. Yeah, there's a little bit of a, you can see there's a little hole right there. I'm gonna get one more rock in there. Let's just throw a small one in. All right, so off for another week of rolling. All right, this is a big week. We got 2 rocks done. This one has a crystal pocket in there that I'm not going to grind out because I like it. But the rest of it is all completely smooth. This one's all done. Those are in the done box. This is the one that I broke last week. It's got a long ways to go. It broke pretty deeply right there, so that's going to be in there for a while. The volume here is down a little bit, so I think I have room for these. Those in there, and just check it out. Yep, that looks about even. Maybe you could get one more in there, but I'm not going to push it. So those go back for another week, and we're making progress. This week we have 2 more done, so there's where we're at with the finished ones. And I've got room for some more in here, so the level is down just a little bit. And just throw in a couple small pieces here. That's pretty good. So that brings my level up to where it was. So off for another week of tumbling. All right, this week we have 2 little tiny rocks done and ready to go. So those are in the done box. These are not done. There's a couple that are getting close. Maybe next week 1 or 2 more. This is the one that broke a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago. And that spot that it broke on still has pretty deep holes in it, so that's going to be a while. The lesson here is it's better to break them yourself early rather than to wait for them to break themselves like this. The earlier you get them broken, the quicker that break starts to smooth over a little bit. So these go back in. And we're still pretty full. I just took out 2 little tiny rocks, so I'm not going to add any this week, so we'll see what happens for next week. Made a little more progress this week. Got 2 done. Level's down a little bit, so I put that in there. You see it's down just a little. So I have room for this bigger one. And probably a couple more. That little guy. So that looks. Yeah. Maybe even more. 1 more. Okay. Good enough, that's down a little bit, but this rock's sticking up through the middle of it, so I think that's where we want it. So off for another week of tumbling. We got 3 more done this week, so those in the done box, and we're going to add 3 more in here. Got 2 done this week, so 1 more in the barrel, 2 done, run them again. This week we have 1 more done. There's nothing else to report. Well, these rocks have been tumbling for 17 weeks now, and I'm a patient person, but there's a limit to my patience, and it's just run out. So my goal was to teach you how to tumble in a small barrel like this. This is what most people start out with. I've got big barrels and vibratory tumblers and all kinds of stuff, but most people start out with this. So my goal was to show you how to do it from beginning to end, and I'm going to still do that, but I'm going to cheat a little bit. So right now we've only got these rocks done from previous weeks. These came out this week. None of these are done yet. And I think one of my problems was that I picked the wrong rocks to show this with. These are just taking longer than most rocks do, so I don't want to discourage you. These are crushed rocks. When they crush the rocks, there tends to be fractures that go all the way through them. So I'm running into that. Plus they just seem to be unusually hard rocks. I'm going to take a minute now and tell you how to shave some time off your tumbling. So the first thing you can do is use a bigger barrel. So this is a 12-pound barrel, this is a 3-pound barrel. There's some advantages to using the bigger barrel. It costs more. This tumbler is about $200 to start with, and this one's about $100. But you can put a whole lot more rocks in here. So if you've got more rocks in your tumbler, it's got 2 advantages. One is there's just more rocks, so you're going to be turning out rocks at a little faster pace just because there's more tumbling all the time. So on this one, you got to get the ones in there tumbled and then add more, and they're starting from scratch. Where here, you're putting them all in at the same time, and they're going to just be, all of them are going the whole time instead of just a small number of them. The second thing is, if you think about like sanding wood, If I was going to stand on the top of this table here and I press really lightly, it's not going to do much good. But if I put some elbow grease into it and rub a little bit harder, I'm going to sand it quicker. Well, the same thing happens here. With this barrel, it's going to be filled up to about there. You've got all that weight of those rocks pushing down on it, compared to this smaller barrel where you've just got a little bit of weight pushing down on it. So as they're tumbling, this just grinds harder because of that more weight on top of it. The next thing you can do is not be so picky. Let me get some rocks to show you what I'm talking about. So these rocks are examples of rocks that are shiny, but not tumbled to get all the little flaws out. So this is a pudding stone where it was only in the tumbler for 3 days. This was in a vibratory tumbler, but you could do the same thing in the rotary tumbler. And it's got a nice shine on it, but it's still got holes and all the natural shape to it. Here's a couple Montana agates. These were tumbled and I left in big holes and cracks and all kinds of stuff in them. But these still nice and shiny, and actually some people might prefer them this way. You don't have to have every little flaw out to make them nice rocks. So that's the reason I'm taking so long, or one of the reasons is because I'm trying to get every single little flaw out. You don't have to do that. The next thing you can do is tumble rocks from the beach. Let me go get some examples. So here's a few beach rocks I picked up. They're already partially tumbled by the waves. So they've been rolling around the sand and other rocks and stuff, so it's kind of like nature's tumbler. And they're already rounded off and most of the way there already. They might still have deep holes in them, and they're not going to be real quick all the time, and they should always go on the first stage. Some people want to skip the first stage. I wouldn't ever. So this is a piece of this serape jasper, same as the stuff I've been tumbling here. You can see how sharp the corners are. Like I said, there's cracks in it because it was crushed. That's just going to take a lot longer to shape up than this is. This is like, almost looks like those already. So that's another thing you can do. Next thing, let's put these away. Next thing you can do is you can grind some of these rocks. So not everybody has a grinder. It's supposed to be a beginner video. But if you did have a grinder, and I do have a grinder, I've got this machine, and then over there you can't see it's behind the camera, but there's a flat lap that goes around this way. I'm going to use that one. But you can see there's one little bad spot I circled. So on all these I took a marker and just circled the ones that could be ground off. So in a lot of cases this one little spot that I'm tumbling this whole rock down, the whole rock's getting smaller, when I could just be working on that one little spot. So I can do that one little spot, throw it back in the tumbler for a week, and next week I'll have a bunch ready. That's my plan with these. So these all had potential to go on the grinder and be ready by next week. Some of them won't be, but a lot of them will be. These were still too rough, so I decided to tumble those a little bit more. I like to tumble first and then grind later after I can kind of see where the bad spots are. So that's my, my plan with this, so I'm going to take it over the grinder and show you what I mean. Alright, so this is called a flat lap, and I've got a bad spot right in here, and then I forgot this whole back is rough also. It looks like maybe the outer part of the rock or something, so I'm going to take off the whole back. This is a 60 grit disc, and we're just going to drip a little water on there. It's a brand new disc, so first time I've used it, should work really well. So I'm just going to do this. This is going to be loud, so I'm going to have to stop talking. I've already taken off a little bit. I'm going to have to take off that whole end there. Almost there, a little bit more. That looks pretty good. I like to round off the edges. All right, now I'm going to work on the back. right, so that's all ready to go. That's going to look good after another week. The reason I go one more week is because I get little ridges and things along here. I didn't try really hard to get rid of them. So that'll just round everything and shape everything a little more. So I think that's ready to go. All right, so I think I'll put that in there. I'll do the rest of these later on and won't bore you with that. What was next? Oh yeah, I remember. I have them in my pocket here. You can tumble softer rocks. So on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, these are a 7. But they seemed harder than a 7 from my experience tumbling. They just went really slowly. Tiger Eye, I can't remember what the hardness is, but it tumbled up really nicely. 3 or 4 weeks and these were ready to go to the next stage. So instead of 17 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Don't go too soft though. Here's Obsidian. And Obsidian shines up nice in the Lotto tumbler. It's really hard to tumble in a rotary tumbler. So this is, I think, 5. If you start to get in rocks that soft, then it gets to be difficult again. So maybe a little bit softer than these, but don't get carried away. I can definitely recommend Tiger Eye. So the next thing we're going to do was, this involves, how am I going to get that over here? Let me just do this. All right, so this is a rotary tumbler like we've been using for this batch and we're going to continue using. This is a vibratory tumbler. This specific one is called a Lotto. There are other brands also. This is going to take us 4 to 5 weeks to finish up the rest of our batch after 1 more week. I'm going to grind those and then put them in here 1 more week and then 4 or 5 more weeks after that. This would take 1 week after. So this uses less grit, it's quicker, it's easier to get a good shine. This takes more grit, much slower, a little bit harder to get a good shine, but it's cheaper. So that's how you can shave some time off this. So I'm going to finish grinding those rocks, throw them back in the barrel, and then we'll throw them back in the tumbler and see you next week. Last week after I turned off the camera, I spent some time grinding the bad spots off that pile of rocks. I put them in the big 12-pound tumbler. And all these are ready this week. This one that's got that really cool pattern on it still isn't quite done. There's a crack in here. I can feel a crack on the back. It's really close and it's good enough and a cool enough rock that I want you to see it at the end, and I'm going to put it in there. I might, after polishing the whole thing, put it back in the rough stage and grind out the little bad spots. We'll see how it looks when we get done. So, got all these done. These are the ones that were done from before. I'm going to finish them up here. Continuing with a small barrel. So that fills it about that much. Then these are going to go in on top. So about like that. Throw that one in there. It's pretty full already, but I'm going to use some ceramics here to fill in the gaps. Okay, so that's actually maybe a little bit too full, but I'm just going to go with it. So what the ceramics do is they fill the gaps, they make more grinding contacts, and then they also just sort of cushion it because things aren't bouncing around so much. Everything goes a little smoother in there, so they keep things from getting chipped up too badly. I'm going to pour water in here. Okay, I can just see the water on the top there a little bit. In fact, I think I'll pour just a little bit back out. So the water's, you can see it down here at the bottom maybe. The water's just below the surface here, just a little bit. So on top of there, I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of 220 grit. And I forgot to get that out, so I'll do that after I turn the camera off. But there's going to be 3 tablespoons of 220 grit. I'll button it up and throw it back on the tumbler for another week. So I'll see you again next week. All right, so I just pulled this off the tumbler. It's been rolling for 1 week in 220 grit. That's what it looks like. So I'm just going to dump it in here. And just give it a rinse. All right, so the nice part about this is all those ceramics can just move right along with the rocks. They get rinsed off, they're not going to carry any grit along with them or anything like that, so they're going to be good to go with the rest of the batch. It's not a good idea to get these or let these dry out right now. I think this is the one with some cracks in it, so if they were to dry out and I happen to have some grit stuck in those cracks, they'd harden right up like concrete. So we don't really want to dry them out. But since you might be wondering what they look like dried out, take one that I hope doesn't have any cracks and just show you what it's looking like. So it doesn't look shiny yet, really doesn't look a whole lot different than it does in the last step. But this is smoother. If you were to look at it under a magnifier or something, the scratches are going to be a little bit smaller now. And that's all we do from here on out, is just keep making the scratches smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually it looks all shiny. So I'm going to rinse these off just a little bit more, and then we'll load it up for the next run. The next run's going to be 10 days, and it's going to be 500 aluminum oxide. But let me just rinse these off a little more, and then I'll show you that. All right, so the rocks have been rinsed really well, and I'm just going to put them right back into the barrel. And like I said, the ceramics are going to go right in with them. And at this stage, you can either use aluminum oxide, or you can stick with silicon carbide. And I like aluminum oxide because I think it's better for polishing. Aluminum oxide, when it breaks down into little rounded off pieces, where silicon carbide, when it breaks down, it actually breaks into little sharp pieces, so it's better at cutting and grinding, and this is better at kind of polishing and smoothing things out. So I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of this. I always put the lid right back on so it doesn't get contaminated by anything. And I have 6 ounces of water here. I'm going to pour this in and see how it looks. And I'm going to go a little bit more. I want the water just a little bit under that top layer of rocks. So I'm watching kind of down in here and seeing if I can see the water. Yeah, right about there. So I can just barely see the water. So this will go back onto the tumbler for another 10 days, week and a half, and then we'll be on to the last step. All right, so this has been running for 2 weeks in the 500 grit. Looks like that inside. So we're going to just dump it in here. And we'll rinse these off really well. All right, so I've got to rinse this a little bit more, and then we're going to put borax in it, and we're going to run it in borax for about 6 hours. And actually, it's kind of late in the day, so I'll probably just let it run overnight. So I'm going to rinse this a little more, and I'll be right back to show you. All right, so I have these all rinsed off. I've already added the water in here, and I'm just going to dry one off, even though I shouldn't. Just to show you what it looks like. These should be kept wet, just in case you have any grit that's in the cracks. It can dry in there. That's one of the reasons I try not to move any rocks on with cracks, then I don't have to worry about that. But it's getting a slight sheen to it. I think you can see there. If this was done in a vibratory tumbler, after the 500 stage, this would be super shiny, but in a rotary tumbler, not so much. So that's what they look like, and what I'm going to do now is add some borax. So this is what a box of borax looks like. You can find this in the laundry section of the grocery store. And I'm just going to add in a couple teaspoons here. And the idea here is to just wash these off really well. So I really only need to run this for about 6 hours, but it's kind of late at night right now. And I'm not going to be up for another 6 hours, so I'm just going to let this run overnight. So the idea is to really clean these up good so that there's no grit left in these at all, and then I'll put them in polish in the morning. So just run these overnight. We're almost there. I should have shown you when I rinsed these out. Just after that 6-hour wash in borax, the water came out quite dirty, so I know that did some good. Hopefully that got some gunk out of a couple little cracks that I left behind in a couple rocks. So now we're just going to put some water in here, and I'm filling this up just so I can just barely see the water right there. So it's just below the surface a little bit. And I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of polish. So this is just a finer grit than the other stuff. This is still aluminum oxide. And I also switched to a polished barrel. So this barrel I only use for polish. And I don't know how important that is. I don't think it's the most important thing. But if you're going to have a dedicated barrel, this would be the stage to have it for. I'm just going to pop the top on there and throw this on for 2 more weeks. And next time you see these, they'll be all polished up. I'll probably do a burnish run, right, like I did before, for several hours with borax again. But we're really close now. So hang in there and wait for the end. All right, this is the moment we've been waiting for. These actually just ran for 3 weeks in polish instead of 2 weeks because I kind of got busy with some other stuff and just didn't get around to emptying it. So here goes. A little rinse. Right, I'll rinse them a little bit better in the sink, but let's just take a peek because I can't wait any longer. That's looking pretty shiny. I think we got a successful batch on our hands here. So I'll rinse these off just a little bit better in the sink, and then we'll take a look at them up close. Well, that took a while, but we're finally done. So at this point, a lot of people would do a burnishing stage. That's where they put the rocks back in the barrel and then usually use some sort of soap. So ivory soap, just kind of shaved off into the barrel. You could use borax, something like that. And then you just run the rocks for a few hours like that. A lot of people claim that gives them a better polish. I don't really do that very often at all. The only time I'll do that is if there's cracks or holes in the rocks. You do not want the slurry drying in cracks and holes because they'll dry just like concrete and you'll never get it out. But we made sure that these were really nice before they went in, so they don't have any cracks and holes in them, so there's nothing to worry about there. So I'm not going to bother with the burnishing stage. As far as I'm concerned, they're done. So let me pull the camera a little closer, we'll take a look at them. All right, so here they are. Well, let's take a peek at them up close. So here's an example of something I should have tumbled out. All that time tumbling would have looked better if I would have gotten that little guy out of there. But that would have taken maybe 2 more weeks to tumble that out of there. This bigger crack, there was no way to avoid that. I could have cut off the whole edge of the rock, I guess, but that's about the only way. That one looks much deeper. But if you can tumble off those little guys, it's a good idea to do it. So that's the reason for me taking so long and being so fussy with everything, is I was trying to get all those kind of things out of there. And I really haven't looked at these without you, so we're looking at them for the first time together. It's a really pretty rock. The shine on these is excellent. I'm very happy with it. So I really don't do that much rotary tumbling. It's good to try it once in a while just to make sure that I know how. So this is the one with a really cool pattern here, and it's got a little crack there. It's not too deep or anything. Cracks up here. It was just never going to be perfect either, so at some point you got to move them on or just tumble them away to nothing. Pretty rock. Of course, they're all pretty rocks. Pick out the best ones here and look at them up close. That reminds me a lot of crazy lace agate. These are really cool rocks. Not the easiest to tumble. Can't say I was super happy with the amount of fractures in these things. But they look nice now. It's kind of a weird shaped one. Oh, I forgot this guy. I probably should have scrubbed that out a little better. It's got a little vug right there. A flat one. More plain looking one. Quite a variety of colors in these things. I just couldn't be any happier with the shine on these though. Sure is quicker in a vibratory tumbler, but you can accomplish the same thing in a rotary tumbler. That one looks like crazy lace also. I'll make a slideshow for you and we'll look at them all that way. Thanks a lot for sticking through this video. I know it got really long, but hopefully it was informative, and if you're trying to tumble on your own, I figure the more details I can give you, the better. And if you just like looking at the polished rocks, if you're not familiar with my videos, I have a series of videos comes out every Tuesday night called Rocks in a Box, where I take rocks out of actually this cabinet right here and just show them off like I'm doing right now. So if you're just looking for pretty rocks, check those out. There's a lot of them already recorded, and I'll be doing a bunch more too. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.